Okay, so this is my review of the first episode of the new HBO miniseries. I know this much is true. This is based off the novel of the same name by Wally Lamb, which came out in 1998. This show is directed and written by Derek Cianfrance, who is known for his films Blue Valentine, which I'm not crazy about, but I really do like his other film, A Place Beyond the Pines. He hasn't really done anything since 2016, so it's nice to kind of see him in this format. I'm always biased because I love seeing bigger directors do stuff in television because it's still my favorite format. And what's interesting about this show is it's got its own unique flavor because it's, I would call, an indie miniseries. When you're watching this episode, you feel like you're watching just an indie film. And it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out and how if it works effectively over 6 episodes. And it's very niche. I can see a ton of people seeing this premiere and dipping out, and I can see a ton of people seeing this premiere and falling in love with it. So I think it really just hits a specific audience to enjoy. So jumping into this scene by scene, it starts with the narration of our main character, Dominick Birdsey, played by Mark Ruffalo. And this narration's under a big opening sequence with the other character Mark Ruffalo is playing, Dominick's identical twin, who is a paranoid schizophrenic, Thomas, and he's in the Three Rivers, Connecticut library, and he's protesting the Gulf War. He's doing this in what he believes a religious act, and it's a sacrifice, and he cuts his right hand, reciting a passage from the Bible. This took place October 1st, 1990, and you see moments before this happening, they show a scene with the two brothers at the diner, and Thomas says, "You can't worship God and money." What makes Thomas so likable is that he does irrational things like cutting his hand, but he does it for just cause, and he kind of falls under that category of this person's mentally ill, but they're saying stuff that makes sense, and it's like the effed up world we live in just raises their illness more. It's hard to watch, and it makes you wonder with someone who is a paranoid schizophrenic, they have delusions and hallucinations of sorts, but this show is almost kind of hitting at a theme where the people who aren't mentally ill are we the ones with delusions here, that this world, this system we're under in this country is trustworthy, is just, where someone like a Thomas kind of just says how it is, which is really interesting, and why I think people like Thomas are just so important, have their place in this world. And we get this scene where Thomas, he's in the hospital bed after cutting his hand off, and he does not want them reattaching a hand. And he's like, this is a religious act of my own accord. And he says to Dominick, I need you to stand up for me for once. And from anyone's outsider perspective, it may not make sense why he wouldn't want his hand put back on. But that's not even the point of it, and Dominick understands that. The point of it is letting his brother make this decision for his own self. So he decides to do the right thing, I believe, and not have them put the hand back on. And that's when he comes in the room and he's like, it's his hand, it's his decision. And the great line Thomas says back is, thank you, Dom. If Mom was here, she would thank you. So that's part of his decision too. He knows this is the right move his mom would tell him to do as well. And it shows the big difference of the stepfather, Ray, which we'll get more into that. So now we're gonna jump to the past, and we get another narration kind of explaining their backstories as children, and when they were born 6 minutes apart in 2 different years. One was born December 31st, one was born January 1st. And right away we see their stepfather, Ray, is a shitbag. He literally grabs Thomas at the dinner table by his right hand and slams it. This would be the hand that he eventually cuts off. And you see Dom hates this man right away, and he says to his mom, where is my real father? Is he alive? The mom never even reacts to these questions. She still won't, as we'll see when she's almost near death. And like the narration says of Dominick, she kept it a secret, she buried it, so we all did. So we see in 1986, we go up a little bit in time, and the mom got cancer and was told she has 6 to 9 months to live. And Dominick's talking about how they all did things for the mom to make it easier. The stepfather making a scrapbook, but Thomas made a hodgepodge collage, he says, and it's for the mom, but it says on it, God is love, which is really important and says a lot about Thomas's philosophy and how much of a harmless person he is, and how that collage will come full circle when his mother dies, which we'll delve into. But we see here Dom's redoing the kitchen, and he says, this family curse, the mom suffers the most. She has a volatile husband, schizophrenic son, and now has the big C. Really sharp writing here. I have not read the book, but the way the screenplay is coming off, how they're translating these words from the novel, is really good. So you see, the mother gives Dominick the manuscript of her father and his story, and it's written in Italian. But of course, the first question Dom's gonna ask is, did he ever meet my father? And that's what I'm talking about, where she didn't even answer it here, where she knows she was going to die soon. So that's how much she wanted to keep that a secret from Dominick. Very intriguing, wanting to know what the deal is with their dad. But you see when Dominick puts her to bed here and he's in this bedroom, there's strong blue tones. It's very simple production design in this apartment, and there's this really odd music playing in the background when he's looking at the pictures of his mother with her father. This is where it really started to feel like an indie, and you know it's kind of settling into that tone here. So it's very interesting to see that in the TV format. And I just keep thinking, will this work in the end? Or is 6 hours too long for that kind of feel? Time will tell. So he wants his grandfather's manuscript translated. This is where we bring in the scene stealer of this episode, which this actress is always known for doing in Juliette Lewis, who plays the scholar here, Nedra Frank. Side note, I just interviewed Juliette Lewis about this first episode, so make sure to check that out. After the review, we break down each scene she is in, and it's an awesome time, so I'd love for you guys to listen and give it a thumbs up. So this Nedra character is basically playing the comic relief here in a sense, and is chaotic, and she's got some serious martyr syndrome. She wants $400 straight up because she says she has such an oppressive schedule. Doesn't look like she's too busy in there. And she's like, oh, I thought you'd hustle me with your good looks. So she's already flirting with him a bit, and you're trying to read her as a character as Dominick is. And what's interesting is this whole show, every scene Dominick is in, we're all seeing it from Dominick's perspective. So it's very personable in that sense, and you feel such an attachment to the main character. And what better an actor for that type of role than Mark Ruffalo? One of my favorite actors, and reason being he's my favorite type of acting, where he's very real. He doesn't come off too theaterish or overacting ever. But I love the transitions in this show this far, especially here where there's like a harp music theme they got going on. But this literal town is surrounded by a river, and there's a very water theme here in tone. Like I said, with the blue colors, the flowing water we constantly see, and that harp music is very water sounding. So it's just, they're setting up this town really well and feel. It's very in sync. So we see though, he calls Nedra weeks later, and he's like, what is he like, meaning the grandfather? And she's like, I can't stand him. He's a chauvinist pig. If I had kids, I would not let this man near my children. So this is one of Dominick's biggest fears coming to light, that there's some messed up family past here going on. And to hear that his grandfather probably treated his mother terribly is not something he wanted out of this, especially because he wants to give this to her as a gift. And I want to jump first to when we see Nedra again, because she comes to the apartment, and that's why she says to Dominick, I'm concerned about you giving your mom this as a gift. You should wait for this to all be finished before even mentioning it, because it seems pretty messed up. It's also hysterical how Nedra just shows up uninvited here. He thought she was gonna bring him the manuscript. That's all he wants. And he's like, is it almost done? And then she says, can you please stop putting pressure on me? I'm not good with pressure. And then she jumps at the beer he offers, suggests to order pizza. So she's obviously there with different intentions than him. And you see when she sees the picture of his wife, he says, that's my wife. And he goes, no, I mean ex-wife. So he's clearly not over her. Lends to why he's not being receptive to Nedra here. And that's why he suggests to drive her home. He's already rejecting her. But Juliette Lewis absolutely kills it here when she goes to start playing the music and puts on Wham. Great song, by the way. And her drunken dance is absolutely hysterical. And this scene was my favorite scene in the episode. It was a joy to watch. And this was really the first scene that Derek Cianfrance really shows what he's all about in having these very long conversational scenes. They're very natural, and they play out like a natural conversation. Again, you're either with it or you're not. I see both sides, where someone could be really bored by something like this, and someone could also be in love with it. It's kind of really specific taste. But she tries kissing him here, and he's just laughing, but then he plays it off like he's nervous. But she's super offended. She's been rejected. And then when I'm talking about the martyr syndrome and just being chaotic, like, she starts saying that he locked her in, and this was sexual harassment getting her to dance for him. And he's like, what? And she's like, I don't show my real self to anybody. This really was one of the best scenes I've seen in a show in a long time. It was so enjoyable. Two amazing actors just doing their thing. And it was really, really funny. And then, of course, the next day, he goes to the university, and Nedra Frank is not there anymore. And this will be why later on, Dom flips out when he goes back to the university after his mother dies, because they're not helping him out. He has no idea where this woman is now with his treasured manuscript. So let's jump back now to when he brings Thomas to first see the mom before she dies. Thomas is so lovable. Mark Ruffalo is playing it great. I'm happy they had him have extra weight as Thomas so you wouldn't get confused having two twins on the screen, because sometimes I hate in movies or shows when they have identical twins but they look exactly the same, where sometimes you're like, wait, who's who? And it can get dull to the eye, so like there's a little difference there. But what makes Thomas so likable, little lines like in the diner early on when he said he wanted hot dogs, and then when he says here, you said we could go to McDonald's. But this causes Dom to just flip on him in the car, that he didn't sit next to his mom when she needed him. And Thomas runs out of the car, almost gets killed on the highway. And why this works so well is, like I was saying, how you're really in Dom's shoes, but what this really is showing you, this story so far, that I'm taking from it, is being in the perspective of someone with suffering happening all around them. And a certain type of survivor's guilt, in the sense of like, oh, he's the one out of this group that's the most normal and not had direct tragedy, but now has it all around him. It's a result of everyone else's, and having to be the one keeping everything together. And you feel for him, because yeah, you would want to yell at Thomas in that situation, but then he has to remind himself what type of person Thomas is, and to forgive him more easy, and how tough that can be sometimes. But you see that he goes to the river and he says sorry, and they go to McDonald's. And that is the saddest I've ever seen somebody eat a McDouble, when Thomas is crying eating it, clearly thinking about his mother. So a quick appearance here from the great Rob Hubel, one of my favorite comedic actors, known for the show Human Giant back in the day. You've seen him in a ton of comedy movies. I'm interested to see where he fits into all this, but he's Dom's friend. He is an actor, but he is calling him about a TV commercial he's in, and Dom can't help but to laugh about it. And his friend is clearly upset because he wants to be taken seriously doing something like this. I can't wait to see more of Rob Hubel in the show. He's got a pretty high billing here, so we'll see. And again, no book spoilers anywhere in the comments. We're just talking show here. Please have that for somewhere else. So here's the really powerful scene. Here's a Emmy type of nomination scene for Mark Ruffalo, is when he goes to see his mom on her deathbed. And this is where I started tearing up, because that's how powerful Mark Ruffalo's tears were here, looking at his mom. And I love the choice by Derek Cianfrance to do an extreme close-up on Mark Ruffalo here, when he's crying, looking at his mother and keeping on his eye. And she says, take care of your brother, promise me. And he promises. So they're doing a really good job of showing you at the start of this episode why Dominick would clearly let Thomas keep his hand off, and his character intentions, and they backtrack to show you how we got to where this crazy situation opens up the show. And this is interesting, because now Dominick is going to start to feel the weight right away when his mom passes, of taking care of Thomas even more, making sure he's okay, and having to tell Thomas mom died. And Thomas says he wants his collage back that he wrote, that God is love. And Dominick says, I'm sorry this happened. Thomas says, it's not your fault, it's God. So it's going to be interesting to see how this whole story comes into play of religion with Thomas, because he's clearly a religious person. Does he have a back and forth hate and love relationship with God? Because clearly here he's blaming God for his mother's death, and he wants that collage back that he was saying God is love, but he clearly doesn't feel that at that moment. But this must be something that turns back and forth, because he eventually sacrifices his own hand for God. So now we're going to cut back to current day in the show, and the narration leading to that is Dominick explaining, since his mother's death, it was just a kickstart into Thomas's mental illness going even deeper. And we see Dom's driving the car, tells Ray about this hand incident. And the stepfather's like suggesting that the mom might be to blame for how Thomas ended up how he did, and that he wasn't raised right, and she always blocked him from treating him the right way, he believes. Again, just so unlikable, this Ray character. But Dominick says to him, this isn't anybody's fault. He's a paranoid schizophrenic, and this is in his brain. This is genetic. Something that clearly someone like Ray is not going to understand. And we get a scene here now that's just showing you more about Dominick's character and where he's at, and when he goes to see his ex-wife, Dessa, and how tragedy kind of brings these weird feelings, especially with exes, about where he even goes in for a kiss here, and she's like, why would you do that right now? But you see, he bonds with her again, because he needs someone there for him again, where he feels that love for her, where she loved Thomas, she says, and loved his mother. So he's missing that. He's going through this alone. Side note though, from watching Derek Cianfrance's films, I think he overdoes the cigarette smoking with his main characters. It's a little too film school nerd-esque for my taste, where yes, it's cool smoking cigarettes, but it's way overdone in movies, and sometimes I think it's as annoying as having a character chew gum too much. It's distracting and takes away a little bit for the dialogue, especially when they're mumbling with a cigarette in it. And honestly, you know, cigarettes aren't cool anymore. I don't want to sound like a dare person, but come on. We don't need it every scene. So what's really interesting here is when Dominick goes to see Thomas at the hospital, he sees the stepfather sitting there, Ray, and he's like, why didn't you go up to see him? But he seems guilty of something he did. I wonder if he possibly put in place for Thomas to actually be sent to this Hatch asylum now. And you see when Ray says to him later on, why didn't you have them put his hand back on? Now he has a physical disability on top of a mental one. And then we get this great writing, this great line by Mark Ruffalo where he says, first time in 20 years, he was in charge of something. His choice, his hand. So you see with these two characters in Ray and Dominick is someone who's treating someone mentally ill like a human, and Ray is someone treating him like an animal. And that theme going on and how we treat mentally ill people really shown at the end of this episode, which kind of kicks off from this moment in the episode. Because you see in the next scene, he's like, you're putting handcuffs on him, talking about Thomas with the cops. And he's like, he's not violent. He's an anti-war protester. He's non-violent. I love the delivery Mark Ruffalo does here. I think what makes him such a likable actor is like, you feel like he's in every man's man, like you know this guy. He's in your town. You'll see him at the deli. We all know Mark Ruffalo. So you see too, when Thomas now and Dominick are in the police car, Thomas asks him to read a passage from the Bible. This passage is just talking about evildoers doing him wrong and also his parents forsaking him. This is kind of connecting now to the stepfather, because then he asks, where's Ray? Is he mad at me? He didn't come visit. And then you see the paranoia starting to kick in where he's like, was your week screwed up because of me? It's my fault. He's mad at me. So you see too how that decision by Ray really affects Thomas in a just negative way. And these cops are just brutal here. They're hostile. That's really shown well where they don't even let Thomas go to pee when he's clearly saying he's going to pee himself, and he actually pees himself. And I love they show Dominick wasn't even mad at him for that. He knows his brother's being abused right in front of him. And again, being treated like cattle. And this here, we're seeing it come full circle where this is Dominick doing what his mother asked, protecting Thomas, and saying he's not going to leave until he's sent to the right place. This was my favorite scene of Mark Ruffalo portraying Thomas, where he starts talking really fast now and saying he needs to be at work at the Settle Institute, got to get people coffee. And when he pees himself, he does it great. And it's just props to both versions of Mark Ruffalo, because he's playing with an acting double on either side. So he's not getting Mark Ruffalo on the other side to act with to bring up his performance. It's somebody else. So props to that person, whoever that is too. So really well done. Got to be such a challenge filming a twin role like this. And they're doing a really good job so far. And I love the line Dominick says here, you guys don't let him take a piss, you effing Nazis. You feel that. You feel his anger. And you feel the moment when he gets punched, Dominick, and sees his brother get taken away. It's a gut punch ending, literally. This first episode was bleak. And I feel like we're going that way for a while now. So again, it's very to a specific audience. If you're a little bit of a masochist, this is a show for you in a sense. But really, really good writing. Excellent acting. Definitely gonna have to have patience with this one, but I'm sure you're gonna get a lot of reward. We already got some in this episode. I'm gonna give this one a 9.3. It's super quality and it's fresh. It's different. I'm excited to see indie format in television miniseries. See how this comes together, and it seems like everyone here is giving 150%. Let me know what you thought of this episode down below. I'd really love to hear everyone's thoughts. I read every comment and try to respond as many as I can. Also, please check out my review linked down below and in the video itself with Juliette Lewis, who plays Nedra Frank here. We break down the first episode. It's a really fun chat. I hope you like. And please make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of my reviews or my celebrity interviews. And please follow me at SteveVarley1 on Twitter and Instagram for more of me. And I'll see you next time.